Welcome to Achenti's Workshops to Express Creativity, Engaging Canadian Seniors, a project made possible through the financial support of Employment and Social Development Canada as part of the New Horizons Seniors Program. My name is Lecha Canton and I'm Achenti's founding editor-in-chief. Today we are pleased to present Workshop 9, Exploring Identity, Coming Together Despite Our Differences, with Celeste Turner. Our workshop leader, Celeste Turner, is the LGBTQ2+ support coordinator at the Community Health Center in Niagara Falls and a member of the Alliance's Rainbow Communities Advisory Group. In 2019, Celeste's work earned them a YMCA Peace Medal. Celeste lives with their partner in Welland in Southern Ontario, and we were very pleased to welcome you, Celeste. The microphone is all yours.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for this opportunity and for having me. And thank you folks for taking I was going to say part of your Saturday morning, but your Saturday, whatever time of day it is where where you are, to share time and space with us. So yeah, I'm going to share some slides and you folks, somebody can let me know if that's not working properly. I haven't shared yet. Don't worry if you're like, it's not working. Here we go. I'll make that full screen. Does that look okay for folks? Lucha, yeah, awesome. Okay, yeah, and just a bit of an introduction as well on top of that. And so, Lucha, thank you for giving that introduction of me. I'll just also mention a couple more things personally as well. So, first of all, I want to acknowledge that I am a descendant of European immigrants. Particularly on my mom's side, really strong roots in Italy, and I can hear my Nona's voice saying Sicily. We're Sicilian, and correcting me with that, and wanting to acknowledge that and bring that into the space. And maybe, again, we have folks connecting from around the world, from across the ocean, and so just if I can invite you to bring presence to the original custodians of the land from which you're joining on today. And so for me, I'm a settler to this land. Niagara is the shared traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Attawandaronk peoples. And so wanting to mention that, and that my family, coming to this land from Europe was able to find opportunities for growth, for wealth, for prosperity, which was a direct result of colonization. So that my family's ability to thrive is the direct result of oppression of other folks, of Indigenous people. We're here on this land. So just wanting to really acknowledge that and bring that into this space. My work as the LGBTQ2+ support coordinator is a big part of my job, is providing education around sexual and gender diversity, around queer and transness. And I can't do my job properly. I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I didn't also talk about colonialism and the impacts that that's had of oppression on Indigenous folks, and also for queer and trans folks, especially Two-Spirit folks, and how that all intersects. And so I just really want to bring that into this space and invite you to take a moment to think about that as well for yourself and from where you're joining from and your family's roots. So as mentioned already, I work for the Niagara Falls Community Health Center. I just want to share, these are identities that I hold. So I identify as queer, genderqueer, non-binary, transgender. I do use they, them pronouns. And the reason that I have an asterisk on the word queer is because I know that for some people, the word queer has it lands in different ways. It can have different history, different meaning. And so I want you to know that when I use the word queer, I only mean that in a good way. Queer to me is not a rigid box or a label, but like a warm blanket of embrace of who I am and how I love. And so know that if and when I say the word queer, I only mean that in the best way. So I just want to preface that as well. And then just a little fun fact is this is my cat. I try to slip in something else about like, here, I'm a human and not a weird talking head on a screen. This is Amy. And I closed the door, so I don't think she'll pop in on us, but just to kind of ground that back to, and just to be like, I'm human and joining from that space as well. So yeah. So a little bit of housekeeping, quote unquote. Please just always do what is in your best interest. Whatever that means. I'm not going to tell you, some examples might be like if you need to take a break, if you need to go get water and come back, any of those things, like by all means, please do that. Don't feel like you're having to check in with us around that. Some of the topics that we'll talk about today might be really sensitive for some folks, might not be very sensitive for some folks. And so just tuning in with yourself and knowing yourself and knowing what you need to do to take care of yourself is going to be important. That being said as well, if you can please do your best to keep your microphone muted if you're not speaking. I'm super informal. I love like pop your mic on and be like, hey, Celeste, and let's, chat about something. You don't feel like you have to use the raise hand function. You can if you want to, by all means, but I'm open to discussion. This doesn't have to feel like a weird lecture-y conversation. I'd love to, feel like we're really in the room together. And so by all means, anytime if you want to chat, just pop your mic on and we can chat. You can use the little typey chat function as well too, of course. But I get distracted really easily. So if you're not talking, please try to keep your microphone off. And then today's conversation is going to be a lot of prompting you to think about things that you will want to write down. And so however you do that you enjoy, if that's writing pen and paper, if you like to have a tablet that you type into, or if you have like a separate Word doc open or something for today, whatever that is, just have that available for you. And that will be useful as we move through this morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you are, as we move through this time together. Let's say that. So I would love for us to do some brief introductions. And as Lucia said, this is being recorded, so you participate in whatever way feels good to you. But we do have a 10 is a really nice, I think, intimate number of folks to be in a group with. And I would love if we could just do a quick introduction of our names, pronouns, and a bit of a warm up. I know this feels like super cringy first day of school icebreaker-y, but I promise that it's connected. If you can share something that you think we would be surprised to learn about you. And I'm going to leave that up to you, however that fits. So if you want to pop your mic on, you can. If you want to use the chat function, you can do that as well. So name, pronouns, and pronouns, if folks aren't familiar, pronouns really quickly just means what words do I use if I don't use your name. So if I was going to talk about you and say, I like that thought that you shared, would I say I like that thought that she shared or he shared or that they shared? Just some examples there. So is there anyone who wants to go first? Oh, sorry, I'm scrolling through. Or who will go first? Oh, we have a chat. Whoa, cool. Yeah, Lucia, I didn't know that about you. Lucia, she, her was a butcher during university. Whoa, yeah. That is interesting. You still have all 10 fingers? Yeah, good job. Good job. I'll read this out for folks. Hi all, my name is Liana. I also go by Luca. I use they, them pronouns. When I watch a movie and it's really bad or poorly done, I get really angry and have nightmares about it afterwards. Wow. Yeah. It's fair. Awesome.
I'll go next. My name is Joe. I go she, they, them pronouns. She, her, they, them, either ones that you want to use. And interesting fact about me, I have to pull back on this one, but I used to tour and do like Bible quote competitions when I was like 10, 11, tour Ontario. So that's kind of a fun, interesting fact. And my final year that I toured, my team won. So I'm a champion. I'm a provincial championship champion.
Wow.
Don't ask me to quote anything now. I don't remember anything. That was back in my day.
Wow, back in your prime, Joe?
My prime, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Almost 20 years ago, probably over 20 years ago now, 25.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Kim says, hi, I'm Kim. My pronouns are she, her. I've lived in almost 30 different places throughout my life. Wow, Kim. Yeah, that is surprising. I'll offer a little bit more. So I already did Celeste, they, them. I'll jump off of, I showed you a picture of my cat. I was trying to be like, here's me being a human. Amy is famous. Amy was on America's Funniest Home Videos. We didn't win. I got a free t-shirt. We didn't win anything though, but and because I sold the rights of that video to Disney, they used that video of her in Tom and Jerry commercial. So I'll share that as a silly, surprising thing. Hi everybody, I am Federica, and I like to be called Faith too. My pronouns are she, her, and I have a guilty pleasure, Zumba and reggaeton music. Awesome. And I'll do my best to pronounce things properly, and I apologize in advance. Carmen, Rochelle is Fuchile, she, her. When I'm nervous, I become a little bit misophonic. I start paying attention to literally any noise in the room, and that annoys me. Interesting. Cool, thank you for sharing. Okay, I think for time, maybe we'll move on, but thank you folks for doing that. And like I said, that's a bit of a warm up. And yeah, like I said, I know that might have felt a little bit cringy and like icebreakery, but I promise it's for a good reason. And we'll dive into that. And if anyone's still typing, then please still share it, and we'll come back to that too. So from brief introductions to introductions, not brief anymore. So this is our first activity, our first exercise to do kind of independently, and then we'll share back together this today. So brief introductions, not brief anymore. Now serious introductions, really getting gritty on who are you, what makes up who you are. So you can use whatever writing tool that you like to use and create a point form list. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do this. So like I said, hopefully that was a bit of a warm up, but go ahead and start to do that. Point form list. Who are you? What makes you you? And I remember to wear my watch, which is good. So go ahead and start to do that for a few minutes. And this might seem like not a lot of instruction, but we're going to do more with this, I promise. And maybe I know a lot of us, we have our cameras off, and that's totally fine, but even if maybe somebody could write like done in the chat when they feel like they're done, just so I can get a bit of a sense of time. If I could see you, I would see when people stop kind of writing, but if somebody could, just a couple of us, let us know when they're done, and then we'll know when to move on. Awesome. Thank you, Joe. We'll give folks just another, Luch has looked up too, maybe. We'll give folks just another couple minutes, 2 minutes. Awesome. Okay, so if you're finishing up, that's all right. Just take a moment and do that. Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Liana. Okay, so what we're going to do with that list is start to dissect it. So from your list, the first thing you're going to do is go through your list And this might feel bad. This might not feel good, but we're going to cross out. You don't have to like aggressively scribble out just like a one line or however it works on your device. Cross out anything that you wrote down because it is something that you have. And this might seem insensitive, but I promise there's a reason. Anything that's something because you have something. So for example, you might have put like even being a parent. Well, you have kids and that's what makes you a parent, or you have that family dynamic that makes you a parent. So that's something that you have. Maybe you've put maybe you resonate with like an illness or disability, the condition that you have. That's something you have. So that's something you're going to cross out. If you're not sure about anything, you can put it in the chat or we can talk out loud about it. So just take a minute to dissect your list and go through and cross out anything that is because it is something you have. And while folks are finishing that, and everybody works at different paces, I'll introduce the next piece. Is you're going to cross out anything that is something that you do. Awesome, thank you, Joe. So maybe you put like, I'm a skier. Well, you do that, you go skiing, so you're going to cross that out. If you're an artist, you're a writer, that's something that you do. And so again, you don't have to like aggressively remove it, but just like an acknowledgement of, well, that's something I do, and cross that out. Age, great question. Well, so let me introduce, this is the third, the last piece of the crossing out situation is something you consider yourself to be. So I would say age, depending on how you want to look at it, is either something you have that many years, or maybe it's something you consider yourself to be. But either way, I would say that gets aligned. Lucia and I just had a conversation about like, the definition of a senior, and is it like, what number is it, and that kind of stuff. And I think either way, it could be you have this number of years, or you consider yourself to be a senior or a millennial or whatever, insert thing there. So yeah, so just keep combing through your list and crossing out anything that is something because it's something you have, anything that it's something because it's something that you do, and anything that is something because you consider yourself to be that. And so again, I know this might not feel good, but even like if you're like put, I am kind, I am caring, I am funny, those are things I'm not saying you're wrong. Those are things you consider yourself to be. So we're going to cross those out. So just curious, does anyone still have, if you're done, you've gone through your list, does anyone still have more than 5 things left on their list that we didn't cross out? Does anybody, okay, Joe, that was my next question. Does anybody have anything left? And Joe has nothing, Federica has nothing. Okay, same, yeah. Whoa, it usually doesn't work that well. Good. Usually folks have like 1 or 2 maybe, and then sometimes we talk about it and we're like, oh, actually that's something you have. Oh, actually that's something you do. Okay, wow, lots of us have nothing left. So yeah, Kim, nada. Okay, so, and maybe that makes sense. This is where we're going, is that like, we define ourselves by these 3 things: things that we have, things that we do, and things we consider ourselves to be. And so, yeah, typically with this exercise, we can pick through everything somebody's written down, and usually we can whittle it down to 0. There's nothing left, because everything that we identify with are these things. And so that's not to say that they're disposable or that they're superficial or anything like that. But the point of this exercise is I want us to understand, like, if there's anything left, what is it? So it sounds like for a lot of us, there actually isn't. Sometimes things are complex, like even around, like, where does heritage fall in? That can be a difficult one to point. And again, it's subjective. It's up to you folks how you digest it. But the other thing I want us to take a moment, and again, if you want to journal this, if you want to write about this, is what was hard to cross out? Were there things that you're like, oh, like as you're like, but I am this. What do you mean? And just noticing that, if you want to take a sec to look back at your list too. And that's why I said to you, don't have to hardcore scribble. It's just like if you can, acknowledge and cross out. What was hard? Were there things that were hard for you to cross out? Were there things that you're identifying with that you're like, bye, easy, gone, don't need that anymore? And so just I want to offer you a moment to take space and time to reflect on that. Yeah, name, yeah, that would be tough. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's something you have, I guess, and or something you consider yourself. If you're like, I agree with this name, this is this is what I'm called. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Lucia. And then another piece also, and this is just a point of empowerment too, is like, who's defining who? Are you letting things define you, or are you defining yourself? And I don't want to sound ableist in saying that. There's certainly things that, can take big tolls on, or not tolls, but have big grasps on how we live our lives, and they are really defining pieces. And so again, I don't mean to belittle anything, but even I work in healthcare, and we're really careful about patient-centered language. So we don't say, for example, we don't say cancer patients, we say patients who have cancer, because that puts the person back in the driver's seat, that puts the person back in the center of the conversation, rather than having their diagnosis define them. It's a person, and here's this separate thing that they also associate with. So it's just a bit of an activity to really like dig deep. Yeah, thank you, Joe. Retaining personhood. Exactly. Yep. Thank you. Right.
I had actually written, it's interesting, I'd actually written on this list, I'm human.
Yeah.
And I think that's a hard thing for us to kind of disconnect from, because there's so many implications of being human, right? Like, first of all, we see ourselves as the center, right, of most things in our existence. And just like humanity as a whole, we see ourselves as superior and center to what happens on this planet. So
Right.
it's kind of interesting to try and like remove that part of yourself, or look at it as not the end all be all. I think in your existence is, I think, the hardest thing actually on that list I had to cross out.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yep. Thank you for sharing that. Before we move on, does anyone have any other thoughts that they want to share? Any questions? Liana says, I agree with that. I wasn't sure if being human is more an objective fact. Yeah, or something you consider itself to be. Is having a human body something you have? Like, it's quite philosophical for sure. It can be hard to, and there is no right or wrong answer. It's just for us to get really introspective and thinking about this. And I love that one being so complicated, the human aspect. And that we'll talk more about that. But yeah, it's like we all have that one, and how do we keep it or not? But definitely that complexity unites us for sure. Any other thoughts, or does anyone have any questions before we move forward? Okay. Awesome. We'll come back to this sort of. Well, you might want to keep that for reference. So as we move forward. So that being said, we've talked about what makes us, and so I want to talk about what makes us different. What are our differences? So here's another prompt for you: is what makes us all different from one another? And not necessarily us in this Zoom room, but like us, like humans. What makes us all unique? What makes us different from one another? Again, there's not really right or wrong answers. And if you want to take a moment and journal your thoughts, however you want to write, you do you, you know how you enjoy to do that. If you want to write in sentences, if you want to write point form, that's fine. So just take a few minutes to ponder and chew on that and get that out. And again, it's really helpful if somebody can just send me like a done message or two, and then I can know when we're ready to move on. We've talked about like noticing noises, and I can't not hear the fan in the room next to me now, so I'm gonna go shut it off. But I'll be right back and keep doing that. Yeah, got your message, Joe. Thank you. This could be like a very long essay. It could be like whatever amount we write right now will never feel like enough, probably. So, and that's okay. So just kind of whatever comes up for you quick and first. Yeah, thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Joe. I'm gonna say another 30, 45 seconds, another minute, and then we'll keep moving on. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Okay, so if you want to just finish up whatever last thoughts you're working on there, the next piece, what we're going to do with that, what you've written now, is a bit of an activity. I want you to, if you wrote in sentences and paragraphs, go through and kind of circle or highlight however you want. Identify words that really stick out. Like one word, boom, like this is something. This is something that makes us different. This is something that drives our uniqueness. And I want you to pick out those words. I would say at least maybe if you can find three words that you're like, this is what makes us different. Yeah, no problem, Dom. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And so once you have those words, we're going to do this activity. It's called a Mentimeter. I don't know if some folks have used this before or not. And we have lots of ways you can participate if you've never used it before. So Mentimeter is, I'm going to pop out of this screen share. 1 second. I'm going to switch over to, where did it go? 1 sec, sorry. Too many windows open on my computer all the time. Okay. Mentimeter, there's a couple ways we can participate. One is if you have a separate device that you're not the one that you're on Zoom with, if you have a cell phone or something, you can scan this QR code in the bottom left corner. So if you open your phone and you point your camera at the QR code, it's going to take you to this link. Another option is you can click the link I put in the chat. If you do want to use the same device that you're in this workshop with, click the link in the chat, and it's going to open a window for Mentimeter. And essentially, yeah, okay, cool. Responses are coming. And I'm going to actually, let's do this. I'm going to hide the responses until I feel like folks are done. And then we'll get a reveal of it all at the same time. So it sounds like people are using it. That's great. I can see it's happening. I'll just show folks too if you're still following along. Can I turn my brightness down maybe? It'll open a window and it's going to offer you spaces for 3 submissions, for 3 words. So the 3 words that you picked out, It's okay if you need to put 2 words, if you're like, this is a 2-word answer, that's okay, but 3 responses and put those in and hit submit. And it's going to create a word cloud for us that we'll look at together. Oh, it's so cool to see it like doing its crunchy thing and changing. It looks like probably everyone's in because it stopped moving, but it's okay if you're still submitting. Go ahead and do it. It'll keep automatically updating. How do I there get rid of that? Yeah, cool. Okay, ready? We're gonna hit show responses, and it's gonna make us a word cloud of what our answers are. So, oh, this is so interesting. Typically, like say if a bunch of us said the same word, it would be really big. It would come up in the middle like really big. Like say I see love in the middle. So if all 9 of us said love, love would have been this like really big word in the middle. But I wasn't looking for themes. It's so interesting. So here's our answers. So inner thoughts, nothing that matters, sensitivity, interest, smile, desires, worries, drink, personality, experience, love, history, pain, flaws, talking, look at, bodies, life experiences, life experiences, life experience, and then life experiences again, and then we have experiences, and then we have experience. So it's so funny. If we had typed that word the exact same way 4 times, experience would be like big in the middle. So cool to see that happening. Thoughts, responsibilities, process of speaking. I hope I said them all out loud. I'm sorry if I missed some. Personality. Yeah, okay. Interesting. Good. So we're also going to talk about, now, like what also makes us similar, what makes us connected, what connects us as humans. And, I think like when we can think about like empathizing with folks, there's a couple different prompts that pop into my brain. A silly one, but very seriously, like if somebody is maybe rude or mean, my brain goes, who hurt you? Like, this isn't about me. What's going on? Or maybe it is about me and there's reflection to happen. But thinking about who hurt you is a silly way of saying life experience is maybe they've had a terrible morning. Maybe, they've got lots going on that I don't know anything about. And that helps me be able to be graceful and offer space. So I like that experiences came up for a lot of us. So I'm going to take this and do something with it. And I'm wondering if we've been chatting for about 40 minutes. Do folks want to take a quick 5-minute break and then we'll come right back? Does that feel okay? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, Joe said sure. Okay, so let's come back. It's 12:09, so let's make it 6 minutes. Let's say 12:15 to come back. Awesome. Okay, yeah, I can see in the chat some folks are back. Thanks for letting us know. Awesome. Okay. So when you folks were on your break, I hope you feel, I don't know, I get anxious, antsy when I sit for too long, but I had a quick turn the fan off, come back, so my feet are doing okay. But while y'all were doing that, taking care of yourselves, I just put our little Menti results in a slideshow here for us. Hang on, where did it go? Here. And screen is loading. Big. Okay. So if we were in person, we would have done this on like a chart paper, and I would have come at you with another piece of paper slapped on top to do this, right? So here's our results of what makes us different, what makes us unique from each other. And the next question really is then what makes us the same? And typically, and you tell me, we can have a discussion. I'm not saying that this is correct, but typically the answers are the same. If we had chart paper, I would just slap a new label on top and be like, probably this. And so I'm wondering if folks agree with that. Do you think that this also is what unites us? This is what makes us similar? Do you feel like, is there anything that's missing? What's missing from this? I feel like the word human, we talked about that earlier. We could add the word human, that would be part of it. But anything else? Or do you feel like this also is uniting at the same time?
If I can speak,
Please, yeah, go ahead. Yep.
um, I have this kind of philosophical thoughts about it, and that's what I wrote actually in the previous journaling task about what makes us different. I think that's we what makes us the same is what we relate to. Like I can relate to something you say, to something you do, to something you feel.
Yep.
But then I don't actually know whether I can really relate. I mean, I can relate on a kind of superficial, uh, mm, I don't know,
Yeah.
thing, but I will never know what's really inside your mind because I think that each mind is different, and we will never really know what the other is really thinking because something is to think about what we feel or what we love, what we are worrying about, and something is to express this thing. So that's my thought on this topic.
Totally. Yeah, that makes sense for sure. Brene Brown says something about when talking about empathy, like in order to relate to what someone is telling us, we need to find something like of equal weight or effect that we've been through to connect it to. But even then, like for us to truly empathize, but even then we don't know, like, are we doing it right? Like, did I pick the right thing to connect to the thing that you were telling me about? I totally, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Federica. Thank you for sharing that. Mm. Anyone else have any thoughts about this, or like any like feelings of something is greatly missing or something shouldn't be there anymore? Any thoughts about that?
What you just said, Celeste, reminds me, I read an article on how to behave when you want to show support when someone is grieving. And the first thing they say is never to uh, compare their grief to yours or to say, oh, I went through the same thing, because we don't know, right?
Right.
Oh, usually people tend to do that automatically to show that they can uh, identify with what they're going through, but really you can't, which is exactly what Federica said.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, nothing makes me more angry than somebody being like, oh, I've totally been through the same thing. I'm like, you literally haven't. It's actually impossible. You have not been through the same thing at all. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that brings me to the next question then is, so if what makes us different and what makes us the same is quite similar, I won't say they're the exact same thing, but if they're quite similar, then why, and this is, again, this could be a giant statement, a giant thesis, but what are our thoughts? Why do we humans, not, anyone specific, why do humans collectively, why do we discriminate against each other then? And what is that? And this is kind of just, there's no right or wrong, just chewing on that thought. Sorry, Joe, were you going to say something?
No, it's okay. I'm just gonna let you finish your sentence. I think it's pretty simple why we discriminate against each other. We have issues as a collective looking external. We just do. I think all of our society, like regardless of our path in our society or our collective, for some reason, humans just struggle with the capacity to show empathy outside of something that directly connects to them, just for some reason.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
can
thank
teach
you.
ourselves to. We can try and like become a little bit more sensitized to it and teach ourselves to. But I feel like for some reason it's not our default.
Right. Yeah.
Whether it's because of like evolution, it's how we've survived as tribes, right? Whether you want to go back to that like way of looking at it, is that we've survived in the way that we have because we've managed to kind of do an us versus them,
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
I think it's just a natural thing for us to automatically, for some reason, not lead with compassion and not empathize with others for
Mhm.
some reason. And it's unfortunately leads to discrimination. It's just very easy to slip into that path of discriminating against somebody else because again, our brains are kind of lazy and we like to categorize a lot of the time, and we like to create rules in our mind as to how to operate with under specific circumstances. And so because of that, we tend to, unless we're being very thoughtful and thought driven about how we're operating and very introspective about how we're operating in the world, we tend to default to these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, Joe. Thank you so much. In the work that I do, I often talk about like as humans, we're so ironic because we love logic. We love when things are simple and they make sense. 1+1 is 2. I put this in a box and it fits really nice and neat and like all of that. And then we try to do that to each other, like to humans. It is the worst thing we can do to each other. We are way more complicated. It's absolutely not a good idea. But that, yeah, like you said, it's so simple that we do that. Folks will often ask me, like when I'm doing sexual and gender diversity education presentations, people will ask questions like, well, like when did there start to be queer and trans folks? Like when did that start to be a thing? And I know that's a really silly question to some of us for sure. And to some of us who might be like, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. But I mean, the answer to that is we've always existed. Queer and trans folks have always existed. And experiences that in humans we would today call queer and trans exist in thousands of species of animals. And humans are the only ones that discriminate, though. We're the only ones with homophobia. We're not the only ones with homosexuality, or insert whatever other language makes more sense. But we are the only ones that have homophobia or transphobia, or et cetera, right? And so, yeah, it's super interesting. And for humans to be like so like deep and complex, and then also have our simplicity be like our demise, it's so ironic, for sure. Anyone else have any thoughts about that? Anyone write anything down that they want to share? Or
I did want to just kind of add one other thing, if I could expand a little bit.
please, yeah.
Um, I definitely always feel like there's this weird ability, especially like if you fall into a minority group. I always find it shocking that we don't have some people within groups don't have the ability to see where there are similarities, right? So, whether you're a racial minority or gender minority, whatever you may be, right, considered, you've experienced some form of oppression, whether it's ableism, whether like there's lots of different ways that we experience oppression in this world. And so
Yeah.
you can understand how complex you are as a human, and like this is not all I am, this is not the totality of my existence, and et cetera, et cetera. You can understand like the nuance of yourself, but for
Right.
some reason, looking externally, we still apply, like you said, that simplicity of like, well, all people that wear red shirts are this way.
Yeah.
All people that are right-handed are this way. Like it's just an odd thing because again, our brains are kind of just lazy computers because there's just so much information and data that it's processing. I really try to look at this that way, that we're just computers. And honestly, there's like a little bit of a fault in the design.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So it's just about like for me personally, I try to look at it as I know how complex I am. I know that I don't fit into any of those boxes, even though, I love that you had us write down all these things that we sort of see ourselves as and define ourselves as, but it's like I still don't fit into the box of any of those things that I just wrote down on that sheet, right? I'm way more complex than any of those things that I wrote down. And so if I know that about myself, how can I not apply that to every single one of you guys in this room and every single person I interact with? Right.
Yeah.
It's a hard exercise to do. It's really hard because we really do default back to this idea of that simplicity of like, no, everybody, like, all people that do this thing are like this, or everybody who is from this place has this interest. So it's really kind of an interesting exercise to do. So I find it very useful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm glad. Good. Yeah, Lucia and I were talking yesterday about the one question earlier. It's like cross out anything that's something you do, and we were saying like that people are so obsessed with that. When they meet you, they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" We're like, "Oh man, how much time?
Yes,
How much
yes.
time do you have?
Drives
What do
me
you mean? What
crazy.
do I do?" Right? Yeah. So, anyways, yeah. Thanks for that rich discussion, Joe. I'm gonna think we'll move on from here. Unless anyone has any other thoughts or anything, by all means, put them in the chat and I'll catch up and we'll share those too. But yeah, thank you so much. Okay. So, oh yeah, Lucha, yeah, we discriminate to elevate, yeah, or feel better, gross, but true, totally that happens as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is kind of our last activity, but it might also maybe be our biggest one. And I'm going to start with a quote. And to be honest, it says Banksy, but when I Googled more of it, I could find like various versions quoted by different people. So I don't feel super great about the source quote, but uh, the message is what's important right now anyway. So just keep that in mind. So quote is in this iteration is, I mean, they say you die twice. One time when you stop breathing, then a second time a bit later on when somebody says your name for the last time. So keeping that in mind, we're going to do this activity. And this is what I said earlier, might be a little bit deep for some folks or a little intense. So please do take care of yourself however you need to. And so I just want to offer a bit of a warning around talking about death and dying. And actually I had the conversation with Lucha yesterday too, where I was like, maybe I should change it. Maybe this is too gruesome or too intense. But the more I've thought about it too, and we chatted about it and kept it the same, but talking about death and dying is something that I think we don't do enough. And so this is related to that, and nobody's actually dead or dying right now in this context. So this activity on your new writing surface, you have a piece of paper, if you're on a Word doc, whatever it is, you need a new writing surface, and you're going to write the date from 2 days ago. You're going to write Thursday, December 7th, 2023. You're going to write your name, and you're going to write your obituary. You can be creative about cause of death, but otherwise, think about what are the things that would be shared? What are the things that would come up in that? We're picking Thursday, December 7th, because we are definitely done that day. Nobody can die that day. We've all made it through Thursday, December 7th. And even in whatever time zone you're in, we're clear. We're past Thursday, December 7th. And so take some time and do that. And this is an activity too where, oh my gosh, what a job. Like you will not feel complete about it in this activity that we're doing together. So don't worry too much about writing style or grammar or that kind of stuff. But even if you want to do this point form, that's okay too. Is thinking about what would come up. What would that be? What would your life in a couple of sentences be summarized into? So we're going to take a few minutes to do that. And then again, if somebody in the chat can let me know when you're done, that would be helpful. like I said, this is an activity that the amount of time in this workshop, even if we spent the whole time only doing this, would not be enough time. So maybe just another 2 minutes for folks to do that. And then we just have a couple more reflective questions, and then we can go into like 10 minutes of Q&A, and then that'll take us to 1 o'clock. Does that sound okay, Lucia?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so just take 1 more minute to wrap up whatever thought you're working on. Lucha, I realized that my obituary veered off into something else. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. It'll probably still be helpful for this next activity. We're gonna kind of dissect it. But interesting. I thought about changing it to like autobiography, but I think this is important, really. The different, same activity, different lens, I suppose. But and I'm just catching up. I just saw Liana said, I feel like this is a while ago. How do you spend most of your time is drawing, but more inclusive? Yeah, it's totally like less capitalist and gross sounding than what do you do? I love that too. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great question. My brain is like, I'd probably answer like folding laundry. But it's true that I spend a lot of time doing that. So okay. So thank you for doing that, taking the time to do it. And what we're going to do with it, oh, sorry, I didn't realize I was scrolling ahead here, is reflect on that. Are you satisfied with the contents of your writing? Not the quality of your writing, maybe, you know, don't worry picking that apart. It's not about writing skills, but about what you wrote, about if your life actually ended 2 days ago, are you satisfied with what's there? Is who you truly are. And maybe you can reflect back to that first activity we did about who are you in point form, is who you are adequately reflected, is how you're living your life, like a manifestation of who you are. And potentially is there room for more? Because we didn't actually die 2 days ago. Is there room for more you in your life? Is there room for more authenticity? So those are just some reflective questions. If you want to journal them, you totally can, or you just want to think about them. Does anyone have any thoughts that they want to share about these questions, about writing that so far?
Well, if I have to think of the answers to your questions about the reflection, I would say that I am not satisfied about the content of what I wrote. And yes, it reflected my authentic self. And this is why I am not satisfied about the content. It's a paradox, you know?
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Federica says, I think there's a lot left unsaid, so I feel like the real me will never really come out. That's true. And I think, you know, an obituary is like, it has to fit in a newspaper, right? Like it is like a small snippet. If I said, you know, write your own eulogy, write your own autobiography, then that would be a much bigger activity for sure too. But I hear you, Federica. Yeah.
Honestly, I love mine.
Yay. Okay, cool. Amazing. Yeah. And there's no right or wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
But okay.
I definitely agree with the points that our other friend shared, that there's definitely more to grow and more to learn and more of life to experience. But for me, I feel like I'm in a really good place in my life right now. And I feel like this is the most authentically me I've been in my 35 years of existence. And I just feel like it's going to get better. So
Okay.
really excited about that. But no, this is a great exercise. And I think one thing that it actually helped me see is the things that I actually wrote about. It are the things that are truly the most important to me, which are not necessarily, are what I'm necessarily bringing to the world regard like materialistically. Had not like I didn't mention any of that in there. I talked about the people that I'm leaving behind. I talked about the impact that I feel like I've made and the interests that I share, right? And so focusing on those things, which I think are going to remain at the core of who I am if I live to be C100, right? So I think
Amazing.
this is a really great way of like reminding me of like those are the things that are important. And even though we get caught up in like what can we achieve, what things have we done, how much money have we made, what do we like those like the more materialistic things in life that we get caught up in. I feel like this was a nice reminder of those things aren't really what we're going to talk about at the end of our life or remember at the end of it, right? So yeah, thanks for that one.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And Anthony, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Joanna, that was beautifully put, and I wish that my sentiments can mirror that, but I feel this is an exercise that was brilliant, and I struggle with it just because while I totally agree that in, those last minutes of your life, what you're going to be remembering is, the people you loved, the people who loved you, and those relationships that basically defined your sense of being. I struggle with sort of, I think, this innately, egocentric human desire to want to leave a mark in some way upon, I'm going to use the word the world, sorry, in quotation marks, because as I've gotten older, I that conception of what the world is for me has changed a lot. When I was a teenager, I had like obviously these huge delusions of grandeur about like making a difference and leaving a mark on the world. I feel that as I've gotten older, and it was funny just because it was I just turned 30 a few days ago, so I'm entering this new era of my life, and I I think the world for me now is more just my community and wanting to leave a mark, a positive mark in some way that will last beyond my life and the life of the people who knew me in this world, in some way, however that mark would materialize. I'm not exactly sure. So it's really sort of grappling between those two forces of wanting to leave a mark and just wanting to, live life as emotionally fulfilling as possible for myself and for the people around me.
Amazing. And happy belated birthday. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, Joe says your community is your world. That's where we could make an impact. Yes, so much. Yes, like I just so many thoughts of like even yeah, like life isn't not worth living if we don't all cure cancer tomorrow. That'd be great, but like it doesn't mean we should just be like, well, giving up or not. And that, yeah, we don't have to have these huge like amazing impacts on the entire world. But even if we think back about that quote, it's not when everyone stops saying your name, it's when somebody stops potentially, right? And so yeah, it doesn't have to be this like giant thing. Another quote, it's escaping me slightly, but essentially the essence, and it might be like customer service related even, but I do love it, is like people might not remember what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And like even that impact is so much and so important. So yeah, and your own joy in that too, and how you felt is so important. So the last kind of tie in with this activity that I want to bring it to as well, and coming back to connection and to all of us, is how is witnessing others embracing their authenticity affected you? How has that, yeah, we're all like, yay, happy birthday, Anthony, yay. How has witnessing others embrace their authenticity affected you? Have you been empowered by people doing that? Have you been inspired by that? Have you maybe been impressed by that? Like, it's such a complicated question, but wondering that. And this is something you can journal on. This is something, if you want to share with the group, you can as well. And then the last question that we have together today that I'm giving it to you is, how does, or can, maybe there's room for it, how can embracing your authenticity also then benefit others, and creating this collective liberation and collective joy and in our, you know, whether we're thinking in the world or in our world or in our community. What does that look like? It was a very rambly question, but the gist of it is on the screen here. If you want to take a minute to journal that or think about it, and yeah. We want to chew on that maybe for 2 more minutes, and then we have anyone who wants to share, have some discussion, and then we can move into our Q&A if anyone has any questions. We'll go from there. Okay, yeah, we have one in the chat, so I'll read that and then we can continue into that discussion if anyone else has thoughts. So Liana says, sometimes when I see someone authentically be themselves, I feel inspired and encouraged, like I can do it too. But what I usually don't see is the price they might have paid to do it. And I have to wonder whether I'd be willing on my end to make the same sacrifice for my own authenticity. Yeah, dang. Yep. Totally hear that for sure. And lots of people looks like are agreeing with you, lots of heart reactions. Anyone want to chime in on that or have thoughts that they want to share as well?
Well,
Oh, sorry.
I
No, go
think
ahead.
I am not a fast typer, so probably I will share my considerations by speaking,
Sure.
by reading them. So when I witness somebody embracing the true self, well, that makes me feel as if I can do the same. That makes me feel inspired, as Liana said previously. But at the same time, I feel like something is missing because if they can, it doesn't mean that actually I have the possibility to do it. Well, the change has to start from myself, from my real self. And so seeing others can be useful, but not entirely useful. Well, I don't know how to explain it because, it is something, embracing your true self doesn't depend on how much you are inspired by others. I don't know if I'm clear, if it's if what I mean is clear.
I think so, yeah.
As for what concerns embracing my authenticity and how it could benefit on other people, I would say that I'm not sure whether my true self will benefit to others, because I tend to consider my true self as not my best version, not the best version of me.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And Joe, you had started to... I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
No, I just said thank you for listening.
Oh, yeah, no, of course. Thank you for sharing. And Joe, you had started to say something?
Yeah, I think I kind of echo both of them. Coming from maybe a slightly different perspective, as someone who like I feel like throughout my time on this planet, I have transitioned into my authentic self and being more confident and comfortable in that. I've lost people in my life because of that. I've definitely seen people sort of have a negative reaction to me being my authentic self. And when I've kind of reflected on where that comes from, often I feel it is what a lot of our culture experiences, which is this fear, right? There's this fear of the unknown, there's this fear of, or rather even this thought of like, I'm not capable of an anger that comes of not being capable of doing it themselves. So there's a lot of jealousy that tends to happen where a lot of people feel like there's something special about the ability to do that when the reality is it lays within all of us to do it, right? And so I think that when you kind of step out and take that motivation to become your true self and like operate in the world as your true self, it does empower others. People feel a little bit more confident in the fact that if you're able to do that, maybe if I do my baby steps, I can come up, have that full experience for myself one day. And I understand sort of what I think it was Carmen was saying regarding like sometimes it's almost not helpful. And I think that just comes again from what I mentioned earlier, which is fear, which is this fear of like how much effort, and even what I think Leanna said in the comments, like how much sacrifice is going to be made for me to take those steps to become that, right? Because it's not easy. People, we see it around us. You see people that live authentically themselves. It's not the easiest task. Like it's not the easiest course in life. They definitely
No.
have flack. They
No.
definitely get like there's definitely conflict that comes from that. But you have to decide. I think for myself, what it was one day, I just had to decide: was I going to, end this short existence on this planet dissatisfied with the fact that I didn't attempt to live that way, or was I
Right.
going to attempt to please a handful of people around me, right? So you kind of have to pick a side, make a choice, right? And that's kind of where you end up in the end.
Yeah, totally. I think it's I'm gonna probably say their name wrong. Ennis Nin says, I can find it. There's a quote. It's like, "In the time came when the risk it took to bloom was, or no, the risk to stay tight in a bud was greater than the risk to bloom. So the risk to
Yes.
stay, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm like,
You
this
got the
doesn't make
quote.
any
You got
sense.
the quote.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Thank you.
You did it.
Yeah, so I totally hear you. Thank you. I'm like, oh, it's not quite in my brain properly, but thanks. And Federica, you had your hand up and then it went away. Did you have
Yeah, if I can, I wanted to share my thoughts on um uh, I think I can speak from like because I feel like I'm younger here because I'm like 22
okay.
and I come from like a younger perspective, so I maybe I wanted to share it because like I think that's something that most of people of my age share, and that is that making a transition into adulthood, especially for us who were affected by the pandemic uh, and all of this stuff. I think it's even harder to find the authenticity and to make this transition into adulthood, which supposedly should make us feel like satisfied with our life. And at the moment, it seems like we have no perspective for our future, and it's even hard to find like power and like embracing authenticity. It's something that comes really hard to me, and also it's almost as if for for some people of my age it's almost as if it's something you should something cringy. I don't know why, but there are people who feel
Yeah.
like maybe they look at you and you're the best version of yourself, like you don't care, you're wearing, I don't know, extravagant clothes, but then there will be some people saying, well, this is not, this is cringy. What are you doing? And so this kind of discourage people. And I also feel like in this first years of my adulthood, I've been looking inward, too much inward, like trying to bring forth my personality, which I've neglected for so many years because of bullying at school and so on. And like I've tried to bring forth my personality, my experience and perspective, but I think that one thing I forgot to do is to look outward and trying to make a treasure of all the experiences that others are sharing with me and trying to maybe be inspired by them. I mean, I try to and I do it, but sometimes I feel like I'm looking too much inward and I've been making so many mistakes with relationship and exploring my sexual orientation and so on. So it's a very tough time being like in the first 20s and transitioning into adulthood. And that's it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that for sure. I mean, I hear lots in that. Yeah, like my partner, she has 5 kids, and they're constantly like, "Mom, you're so cringe." Like she does something silly or whatever, and like she's not. They can call her cringy, but really what that is she's like, I don't give a crap. I don't care. I don't care what people think of me. I've lived my life that way too long. I don't care anymore. Like I'm just gonna let my freak flag fly, and do that freely. And so I think that's so liberating to be able to live that way. And then I hear you, yeah, where sometimes even we're like, what if I don't know what my freak flag is? What if I don't know, that experience? And if we keep looking in, if we don't have a basis to judge that off of, can be tough. I have folks in my office, they want to talk about gender and about identity, and they're like, but I don't know if like, if I'm this label or that label or this label, and sometimes I feel like this, but sometimes I feel like that. And I'm like, what if we just paid attention to like what sparks joy? Like, like Mary Kondo does decluttering, and literally the premise is like, does this shirt spark joy? Yes. Okay, keep it. No, get rid of it. And that's being very simple. I don't mean to diss Mary Kondo in any way, but I'm like, what if we just did that with ourselves? If we were like, this sparks joy for me, yay, authenticity. And we might not be able to find that intrinsically, but just in moving through life and being like, wow, I actually really thought I liked that thing and it didn't spark joy. And so maybe I don't need to put my time and energy into that. But maybe I'm like, wow, I never did this thing before. I didn't know I love curling. Curling sparks so much joy. And now I that's something I do. And so, yeah, it can definitely feel overwhelming and isolating if to just keep digging internally. But to have that kind of back and forth, I think can be really impactful. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I just want to mention some things in the chat here too. Lucha says, I realized many people I knew years ago moved away to be their authentic selves. Yeah. And Joe says, some people find it easier to leave than do it where they are. We see that a lot in Niagara. Niagara is this funky, like both rural and urban, but like really still quite rural area in Southern Ontario. And a lot of folks will maybe finish high school or be partially through high school and then we'll move to a bigger city like Toronto or Hamilton. And have like an explosion of self-identity and finding out who they are. And it's easier to, I think, not easier, quote unquote, I don't know how to measure that, but there's space and room for exploration and experimentation in these bigger city centers. And then sometimes people come back to Niagara, sometimes they never do. But we see that a lot for sure. And Joe says, this is what I find beautiful about aging. It becomes less and less, yes, about what other people think about you. It becomes more about what you think about yourself. Thank you so much. Yeah, and so on that note, just understanding that the more we're able to be our most authentic selves, we create room for others to be able to do that as well, and to create that, it's really simple. If I say collective liberation, that's there's way more to that. It's not going to solve wars, and it's not going to, but it's a start, and it's something that we can do in our own communities. It doesn't have to be this huge global impact, but just everywhere we go, if we bring ourselves in that way, we can do that for each other. So that's everything that I had planned to talk about today, and I think I might be a little bit over time because I know Lucha, you had said if we offered a couple minutes for question and answer, but I'll offer that at this point. If anyone has any questions about anything, really, anything you want to talk about, I'm happy to do that for a couple of minutes before we say goodbye, or if anyone just has any final thoughts to share with the group. And so still on offer, still if people have questions, we can do that. I'm just going to stop screen sharing because I feel like it feels more intimate when I can see even if I'm only seeing your names, it feels more intimate than looking at a slide. So yeah, if folks have any thoughts or questions.
Maybe what's the basis for building the most authentic self for you? What's your opinion on it?
The basis, like how to like the recipe, like how to do that. Is that what you mean?
Kind of.
Yeah. I mean, I think kind of what I said earlier is like, and it sounds privileged to me to say that because I know it's not that easy to be like, well, just figure it out. Just figure out what sparks joy and do that. Okay. Like, well, who do you live with? And are they going to be accepting of that? And, it's so much more complicated. But I think so I would say what I said earlier, and I would add something we didn't talk about is like that's fluid and that can change and that's okay too. That, what sparks joy for me today might not spark joy for me anymore in like 5 years, tomorrow, who knows? And that's okay. And that just really being in touch with who we are, hopefully, and having that awareness and will help to shape our lives in the most joyful way possible, for sure. And if anyone else has thoughts or input on that, I'm happy to hear them as well. I don't claim to be the expert on joy or, or anything like that, but yeah, thank you, Federica.
The only thing I would say is that I think we have to connect with ourselves, right? Like I love what you said about like what sparks joy, but I think it comes even deeper than that because it's very easy to not to not listen to truly how you feel. Like one of the big things wins of me this past year have been if I don't want to be somewhere socially, I just like I'm done.
Yeah,
and I remember having this feeling, especially when I was younger, of like you have to be the last one out the door, you have to stay, you're going to, people refer to it as FOMO, this fear of missing something or not being included. And I've started to ask myself the question of, do you actually want to be here? Is this something that you're actually enjoying? Being more in tune with yourself and how your emotions and how you're feeling and what your connection is to the experience that you're in, I think helps you kind of understand what you actually enjoy and what is actually a part of your authentic self, right? And I think that we tend to become very externalized when we think about, again, how like our friend said earlier, like how the world sees you, right? Like you're cringing because potentially somebody thinks that you're a weirdo or you're a freak or whatever it might be. But stop it. We need to stop looking for that external validation and start looking for our own validation in things.
Yeah.
So when I've turned that lens inwards of like, am I actually enjoying this thing in the moment? It's changed my entire perspective of a lot of the things I do in my life, to be honest with you.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
It's funny because I actually have a post-it in my desk, which says it's a kind of a reminder because it's something I've struggled with in the past months and in general in my life about feelings though, and it says you don't need external validation for your feelings. They're already valid because sometimes the authenticity even comes with our feelings and like people judge you for the way you feel things and the way you feel pain, for example, and so on.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Federica. Yeah. Well, folks, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to pass it over to you, Lucia. I know you have some closing words and yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Celeste. Thank you very much for such a wonderful workshop, thought-provoking workshop. I think we could have stayed here longer. And thank you all who joined us today. I'd like to invite you to workshop 10, which will be next Friday, December 15th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time on Zoom, Writing Away the Pain, Reflecting and Sharing with Elio Iannacci and Licia Canton. That's me. You can check out the Accenti site, accenti.ca/workshops/ some of the workshops we've done, so workshop 10 is our last workshop of this series, but some of the ones we've done are already available on YouTube. So if you go to the Acenti workshops page, you'll find those links. And thank you all for being here today. Acenti's workshops to express creativity, engaging Canadian seniors is made possible through the financial support of Employment and Social Development Canada as part of the New Horizons Seniors Program. Have a good Saturday, a good weekend, and hope to see you again on Zoom or in person.